You know them, you love them, and chances are you might be wearing a pair right now. Blue jeans. Around 450 million pairs are sold annually in the US alone. Invented as a piece of workwear, the term jeans originally described a pair of pants that was made of a different fabric than denim, some sort of twill cotton work trousers. The patent for the first pair of actual denim trousers was filed in 1873 by the tailor Jacob Davis and the industrialist Levi Strauss, or Levi Strauss, the guy was actually German, who owned a wholesale fabric house at the time. They originally had two different models of their jeans which were made of different fabrics, but the original successful 501 model, launched in 1890, established denim as the industry standard. By the way, if you were wondering where the term denim came from, the original fabric used for the trousers was made in the French city of Nîmes, and thus called bleu de Nîmes. The fabric was made on so-called shuttle loom machines, where the denim is woven with continuous strands of yarn, creating denim with self-sealed edges. This is where the term Selvedge derives from. In 1895, textile entrepreneur Moses Cone founded his first denim manufacturing plant, Proximity Cotton Mills, in Greensboro, North Carolina, and in 1905 he founded the legendary White Oak Cotton Mills, which became a major supplier of denim for brands like Levi's, and by 1909 was the world's biggest producer of denim, which earned Moses the nickname Denim King. The company was famous as the Cotton Mills Corporation, but they didn't have that name until 1948. The jeans were robust and intended as workwear, with small details like copper rivets used to enforce the pockets, and were really well received as such. Over the next decades after its launch, some improvements were made to the original 501, like the double stitching, which was intended both as a mean of durability and a brand ID. Belt loops were added in 1922, the first zippers instead of buttons in the crotch followed in 1954. The latter of which is not an improvement if you ask me, but anyways. As the patent filed by Davis & Strauss expired in 1890, some other brands entered the market, some of which, like Bluebell, now called Wrangler, in 1895, or Lee Mercantile in 1911, are still some of the biggest manufacturers of jeans to this day. Hollywood helped the blue jeans obtain their cult status in the 20s and 30s by having Western stars like Gary Cooper wear them. Female stars like Carole Lombard being photographed wearing blue jeans also helped establishing the fabric as part of women's wardrobe successfully. When Claire McCardell released her denim dress in 1942, she sold more than 75,000 of them. In the 50s and 60s, blue jeans became a symbol of rebel counterculture through the likes of James Dean and Marlon Brando wearing them. Some high schools even forbade blue jeans in the 60s. At the same time, Japanese people were introduced to denim jeans through US soldiers who sold them on the black market there during their occupation in the Second World War. After the occupation, the interest for US pop culture grew in Japan, and so the interest in so-called G-Pan grew as well. However, the supply that had been obtained from US soldiers was limited, so there was a demand for more, which some businesses were more than happy to fulfill, and thus they started commercially importing new pairs from the US. However, they didn't sell as well as expected, as these new pants were dark and stiff, and did not have the worn and feel and rebellious look of the ones people in Japan were used to, and they were simply too expensive. Thus, a market for the first domestically made jeans spawned in Japan in Kojima, in the Okayama prefecture, where the well-established Japanese clothing manufacturer Maruo Clothing produced their first pair of denim in 1964. Japan's history of using the indigo plant to color clothes goes back to the 7th century. Originally reserved for aristocrats and samurai, the color had become a standard for normal garments like kimonos and towels as well by the 17th century. The same indigo technique was now supposed to be applied to denim as well. This came with a major problem. The traditional Japanese technique caused the entire fabric to turn blue, whereas the threads were dyed separately in the US, leaving the center white, which made the famous faded looks of worn in denim possible. So the first labels owned by Maruo that sold denim, like Canton and Big John, had to import US-made denim fabrics and the machines used to stitch them. In 1967, the Kaihara mill in Hiroshima, which had been a legendary dyer of kimono cloth since 1893, developed new indigo dyeing techniques, and thus the first pair of denim jeans made entirely in Japan was born. Companies started inventing pre-washing techniques to give them the worn-in look people desired. Sales exploded quickly. While 7 million Japanese jeans were sold in 1969, they were selling 45 million by 1973. At this time, other now well-known brands like Edwin emerged that tried to recreate the nostalgic American look. From the 70s to the 90s in other parts of the world, the jeans, as they had now become one of the most popular pieces of clothing ever, were adapted by high fashion brands, and the focus slowly shifted from rough materials and durability to crazy cuts and colors. In Japan, however, people appreciated the original durable workwear look. In the 1980s, Japanese denim fans imported used and deadstock US denim to sell in boutiques in Osaka and Tokyo, gaining a lot of knowledge of the garment in the process. At this point, the quality of US denim unfortunately declined due to outsourcing and cheaper production. The new jeans were made on so-called projectile loom machines that work much faster but produce individual, unconnected strands, creating a denim with frayed edges that require stitching. Denim heads in Japan, however, loved the traditional durable Selvedge jeans and thus began recreating the beloved garment that its country of origin had sort of abandoned. In the late 70s, the first companies began to reappropriate the vintage techniques again, producing Selvedge denim on old shuttle loom machines. The Selvedge jeans had their revival in Osaka, Japan, where the first new Selvedge denim companies started that are now known as the Osaka 5. The market slowly grew as people started appreciating the durable fabric again. And thus, the companies began experimenting while staying true to the classic garment. New fabrics, dyes and styles were invented by new companies that tried to set themselves apart. But the changes that were made to the jeans as a piece of clothing were usually details rather than radical reinvent the wheel type changes that would turn the garment into a mere caricature of itself, like high fashion brands were doing it at the time. Out of this, some extremely creative brands emerged. Hidehiko Yamame, who worked in one of the aforementioned boutiques selling vintage US denim, made his own version of an old Levi's 501XX on an old shuttle loom machine. As a brand ID, he hand-painted a seagull on the back pocket. The first line immediately sold out. His company was originally called Levi's, but the name was changed to Ibisu, like the Buddhist god of prosperity, to avoid legal trouble with the Levi's due to the very obvious homage. The name was then changed again to Ibisu, like the Japanese folk god of money, which gained cult status as it gained recognition among famous musicians and other celebrities. The brand went on to produce some crazy cuts over time. Another brand that came from Osaka was Samurai Jeans. Founded in 1997 by Toru Nogami, the idea was to produce limited runs of several hundred pairs with experimental or very heavyweight fabrics to set himself apart from the legendary Osaka 5. The brand focuses on unique, subtle details to set themselves apart, like the leather patch that usually portrays a historic battle between two famous Japanese swordsmen, the silver salvage theme that represents the sword of a samurai, and many other things. In 2008, Brandon Svarc, a former fashion PR who couldn't stand celebrity advertising and marketing anymore, decided to found his own brand, which was to focus entirely on the product and dispense celebrities and ads. His concept? Making high-quality raw denim jeans that would always be made in his home country of Canada and always made from Japanese denim. They feature a line of very different cuts and have set out to make some of the craziest jeans in history, from glow-in-the-dark jeans to scratch-and-sniff denim and the world's heaviest denim, which comes in at a remarkable 32 ounces and can stand on its own. Guaranteed uncomfortable, as the site promises. Over the past decades, denim and the craft behind it has become a proud part of the Japanese culture, with Made in Japan now standing for integrity and quality when buying a pair of jeans. The US had started abandoning shuttle loom denim production as early as the 1950s. In 2003, the Cone Mills Corporation filed bankruptcy, and the last US denim producer, White Oak, finally closed in 2017. There are now finally some US brands that set out to make Made in the USA jeans again, and they are doing a great job. Other brands are jumping on the bandwagon as well, as they realize that people start caring about sustainability and durability again and prefer true craftsmanship over fast fashion that falls apart in 1 year. But they now look to Japan for inspiration. Even companies like Levi's that started outsourcing in the 50s now produce vintage lines of highly priced Selvedge denim again that are marketed with their supposed US heritage. At this point, the raw Selvedge denim jeans has a cult status. It has become an irreplaceable part of pop culture, and probably the only garment to have countless songs named after it.
My blue jeans.
People share their pictures of their faded pairs online that they have worn for years. They share the best techniques to either secure the longevity of the jeans or to produce more high contrast fades. I believe it is important to remember that it is thanks to some Japanese manufacturers who believed in longevity and high quality instead of cheap, mass-produced denim. In short, Japanese denim has become a legendary fabric that symbolizes true craftsmanship.
This time.
Hey everybody, and thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this new type of video, even though it's quite different from the stuff I usually put on this channel. With true craftsmanship, I was thinking about doing a new series of video essays, basically focusing on how things are made. Feel free to tell me in the comments what I should be featuring next on this series. And don't worry, I'll be getting back to the usual content soon enough. If you haven't yet, you could do me a huge favor by subscribing or leaving a like. Thank you, and until next time.